Welcome to the first of two videos in the Role of the Board Chair video series. My name is Joel Christensen and I'm with the Community Development Unit of the Government of Alberta. The goal of this two-part video series is to introduce you to the role of the chair on a nonprofit board. In this series, we will explore the responsibilities of the board chair, the various ways that the chair assists the board, how the board chair performs their duties in small and large nonprofit organizations, and how they can best perform in their role as the chair of the board. Some of you may not be board members, which is fine, but we want you to be aware that the information and concepts presented in this video series are from a board member perspective and are at an introductory level. This video series focuses on the information you need to know if you are a first-time nonprofit board chair, are considering becoming a board chair, or are looking for a refresher on the subject. Please note that the information presented in these video recordings and the related materials are not intended to constitute legal advice, the rendering of legal concepts, consulting, or other professional services of any kind. We simply want to share with you information that we think will be helpful as you navigate your organization through its operations. We are not lawyers, chartered accountants, or other kinds of financial professionals. So for your own organization's specific situations and questions related to the material that we present, you may need to seek advice from a professional in the related area. We also have a toolkit with links to other resources related to the role of the board chair that you may find helpful. The links and the resources can be found in the course and in the description of the video on YouTube. By the end of this first of two videos in this series, you will be able to explain the role of the chair in ensuring that the 4 roles and 7 responsibilities of the board are reflected in their work, explain the skills and processes that are required of the board chair to lead effective board meetings, explain how the chair takes a leadership role in the development and execution of board meetings, and explain how the chair should ensure effective relationships within the organization. Since this is a video, I encourage you to pause whenever you want to make a note, hear some information again, or when you want to make a comment while watching the video with your fellow board members. So let's get started. How do the board members of your board currently understand governance? It's likely that many board members have different levels of understanding about what board governance is and how it's connected to the work of the board and the organization as a whole. Where does the board chair fit into all of this? In general, we can say that the chair has a leadership role on the board. However, it's important to give more detail about what that leadership role includes. In order to be successful in their leadership role, the board chair needs to have some level of skill and knowledge in each of these 5 areas. In this first of our 2-part video series, I will begin with the first 4 of these roles, the 4 key roles and 7 responsibilities of the board, leadership skills, effective meetings, and effective internal relationships. We will focus on the chair's role as facilitator in the second video in this 2-part video series. When we talk about governance, we talk about these 4 key roles. The board focuses on processes and actions that are connected to and which support each one of these 4 key roles. These roles are to define and advance the organization's purpose, to ensure, develop, and conserve resources, provide oversight, and engage in outreach with stakeholders. The board has to continuously work on these 4 things, no matter how many board members there are, how small or how large the organization is, whether the organization has only board members and a few volunteers, or has paid staff and management staff. So who leads the board in this continuous work? It's the chair. I mentioned that the board supports processes and actions that are connected to and support each one of these 4 key roles. The processes and actions I was referring to are aligned with these 7 responsibilities. The chair's leadership role includes working with the entire board to set up the work of the organization with these 7 responsibilities in mind. When the board chair directs the organization and it does its work in each of these 7 responsibilities, the 4 key roles of the board will improve. As the chair of the board, it's your role to find some ways to introduce them to this information. The more the entire board understands the 4 key roles and the 7 responsibilities and how they're relevant to your organization, the more they will understand how their governance work is directly connected to the work of the organization. At this point in the course, it's important to remind you of other resources that our team has created. The board development program resources and the related toolkit are directly related to these 4 key roles and 7 responsibilities. For this reason, we're not going to spend too much time on them during this course, but they are available to you at the Alberta Nonprofit Learning Centre. By no means is this an exhaustive list of leadership skills. However, they are relevant to the leadership skills that the chair will need in their role. One of the skills in this list I want to point out is the last one, and that is shares their leadership role and acts as a mentor. Ideally, board meetings provide the occasion to focus the board's attention on the matters of utmost concern and to call the board to action. Meetings are an opportunity for the board chair to help their fellow board members leave with a renewed appreciation of the mission by connecting that mission to the decisions and discussions that take place during the meeting, an increased understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing the organization. Meetings are also a chance for each board member to contribute to a discussion of importance, as well as discussions that bring up issues that might not otherwise be considered. Good discussions help the board make good decisions. Board meetings can be a source of inspiration and direction. They're a great opportunity for taking advantage of the passion that board members have for the organization and combining that passion with the ability and the opportunity to move the organization in the right direction. Here we're talking about positive things that can happen during your board meetings. Over the next few slides, we'll take a look at some structures and processes that the chair can use to engage their fellow board members during meetings. The chair should create an engaging and effective board meeting. A good agenda is the same as having a good plan for your board meeting. As the chair, you will participate in the creation of an agenda that is the guide for a dynamic meeting that gets the board to participate with enthusiasm. Keep in mind that the participation of all board members is important to the democratic process. Ensure that the meeting is connected to the purpose and outcomes for the meeting, and even the purpose of the organization. The agenda is the plan, so you can focus on that plan throughout the meeting. With that in mind, it's often a good idea to have some time allotments for each point on the agenda. As the chair, you can work with the board secretary to decide what activities are included in the agenda. In the next video, we will speak about the chair as facilitator. We will emphasize that it is important to have good processes for those activities that will engage the creativity and problem-solving abilities of board members. Consider that the board does not have a lot of time to get together and make decisions. If you have 10 meetings a year and they're about 2 hours long or 2.5 hours long, you may only have about 25 hours a year to actually be together and make these decisions. So make the best of the meetings. That's why we have this slide to take a look at. This comparison between the traditional board agenda on the left and the strategic board agenda on the right is one way to assess the way your board meetings are currently structured. A traditional board agenda, as we have it here, focuses on sharing information. Most of the items on a traditional agenda are dedicated to approvals for past meeting minutes, reports, and revisiting unfinished business. Only the new business portion of the agenda pushes the board to consider the future, and this agenda item is near the end of the meeting, which leaves little opportunity to move the work of the board forward. A strategic board agenda starts off with the welcome and opening thoughts. Already this gives board members an opportunity to reflect on their work. The consent agenda, which we will go into in more detail about in a moment, takes all the meeting items that need approval and bundles them into one piece of the agenda that can be approved in a single motion. This leaves time to move on to new business, and it makes time for more discussions, including discussions of goals and strategic initiatives, strategic foresight, and generative conversations about possibilities and perspectives that the board has not yet considered. This type of agenda, which the chair can create with the secretary, requires the engagement and diligence of the entire board. This is a good step towards ensuring that there is work that is getting done between board meetings so that you can use the meetings to ensure that board members are engaged, that they're learning more about the organization, and that they're making good decisions. Here is more information about the consent agenda, which is number 2 in the agenda on the left-hand side of the slide. For the sake of clarity here, we can refer to the consent agenda as items for board approval, because that's what's included in this part of the board meeting agenda. All of the items in this part of the agenda are given to board members at least a week before the meeting to allow them to review each item so that they can be approved at the same time. In this example, the items for board approval include board meeting minutes from the previous meeting, the contract to retain the HR consultant, the marketing committee meeting minutes and reports, and the executive director reports. If a board member wants to discuss an item in the consent agenda, that item can be removed from the consent agenda for discussion and approval. The remaining items in the consent agenda can still be approved in one motion. All of these sections of the agenda provide clarity about what each board member can expect and what they need to prepare. Rather than promote rules of order that your board should adopt during your board meetings, in this slide, we're going to focus on some basic parts of a diligent and thorough voting process, which provides board members with opportunities for participation and that results in good decisions. The voting process starts when a board member has created the motion and is looking for support for this motion. When a board member seconds the motion to show their support for the motion, the chair recognizes this by reading the motion that will now officially be addressed by the board. In the discuss and amend portion of the process, the chair opens the motion up for discussion, amendments are made and agreed upon with consensus of the board, and the chair then restates the amended motion. The vote takes place, and the motion is either accepted or defeated. This process is not written in stone, but it is a good framework for decision-making because it provides board members the opportunity to create a motion and get support for it. It allows the board to discuss it and amend after expressing their opinions and perspectives and hearing the options and perspectives of others. And it results in a decision for or against that allows the board to move forward. One of the most important roles of the chair is to ensure that the board makes appropriate decisions on behalf of the organization. With this in mind, it's very helpful to have an idea of how the impact of a decision can determine how the board makes the decision. This chart shows some types of decision-making processes, a description of when each type might be used, and the relationship between the type of decision and the impact that the decision has on the organization. Your board may use one of these types of decision-making for its voting process. However, it's very important to point out that your organization's bylaws likely already include two important pieces of information. One is what constitutes quorum for your board. Quorum is the minimum number of board members needed to make decisions official. And two, a description of the voting process that the board must follow in order to make its decision official. You must always follow the voting rules that are in your bylaws. So, the official vote must follow what is in your bylaws. The types of decision-making that are described in this chart are suggestions on how you can engage your board to make the best decision. All of the types of decision-making described in this section of the chart are used when the impact of the decision is low. As the chair, if you decide to use one of these types of decision-making processes, it's important to be clear with your board why you're using it. For example, it may be a relatively small decision. For example, what type of chair to put in the lobby. Or it may be a relatively simple decision that a recognized and trusted expert on the board has advised the board on. In this next portion of the chart, we start getting into some important decisions. These types of decisions may be more common for boards, depending on the type of organization. A simple or clear majority vote still includes discussion to ensure that board members understand the context of the decision and its impact on the organization. As the board chair, Be sure that the discussion results in clarity about what other options are possible. These two types of decision-making are associated with decisions that have a medium to high impact on the organization. And finally, consensus decision-making is when everyone must agree to adopt the decision. This decision-making process can be adopted when a wrong decision would be very detrimental to the board and the organization. For example, consensus may be useful when the organization is considering whether or not to move to a new venue. This could be a potentially huge change with significant financial and logistics considerations. As the board chair, you may need to decide that a simple or clear majority is not enough. You want to avoid any dissension in the board when the decision is made, and in the future when the move and expense are actually happening. Obtaining consensus in this situation ensures that all board members agree with the decision, and it avoids issues in the future that could have occurred even with one dissenting voice. Your final and official decision will be done with the voting process that is outlined in your bylaws. At this point, board members still have the opportunity to change their minds and vote against the decision. I want to restate here that your organization's bylaws likely already include a description of how your board needs to vote in order to make its decision official. You must always follow the voting rules that are in your bylaws. In other words, the official vote must follow the process that is described in your bylaws. This action planning template, which is in the e-toolkit link in the description of this video, provides you with a way to track everything your board needs to know about activities and tasks that need to get done between board meetings. I would encourage you to have a look at it and consider using it for each of the tasks that are associated with the decisions that are being made during your next meeting. I wanted to draw attention to why the chair might want to show genuine appreciation for the board's cooperation and participation during the meeting. As a chair, when you do this and it's genuine, you're letting everyone on the board know that they are important and that their actions and preparation helped make the meeting a success. You're also, in a subtle way, explaining why you are doing what you're doing with the meeting. All of the processes that you put in place are there for a reason. With that in mind, why not evaluate the meeting? Evaluation can be difficult at first, but if the purpose is to improve the work of the board and ensure that everyone is engaged, then it will be easier to get some good feedback from your fellow board members about what went well and what needs to be improved. It's essential for the board chair not only to be aware of how the different areas of the organization communicate with each other, but also to actively monitor that communication and take steps to improve it whenever necessary. It's important to recognize that not-for-profit organizations can have very different structures. However your organization is structured, it's important for the chair to ensure that there is good communication among the different segments that make up the organization. The board and the management or operations have different functions within the organization, but their work also overlaps. For example, one of the financial responsibilities of the board is to develop and set the budget for the year. But the executive director or board committee may spend significant time to collect and coordinate key data and information from the organization to inform the development of the budget for the board. They may even suggest some areas that the board needs to allocate funding to. Then they share the information with the board, and then the board drafts and approves the budget. For the organization to be successful, everything that the board does should be informed by the information that the management provides to them. And everything that the management does should be guided by the decisions of the board. Here I want to say something very important. The work of the organization is a cycle of collaboration and communication between these two sides. And the more constructive collaboration and communication exists between these two sides, the more efficient and effective the organization will be. The chair is responsible for communicating directly with the management and operations of the organization. Keep in mind that management and operations may look different for different organizations. The chair may work directly with an executive director that is responsible for all staff and volunteers in the organization. If there are no management staff in the organization, the board chair may work as part of a management committee that takes on that role. And the chair probably should be the chair of the management committee as well. Or the board chair may work directly with staff and volunteers if it's a relatively small organization. Your organization may not have any of these structures in place. However, you need to know how the board deals with the operations of the organization. What does the management and operations of your organization look like? Your organization's structure will have an impact on how the chair works with it. Whatever structure your organization has, remember that the board chair leads and works with the entire board to ensure that there is a clear division of responsibilities between the board and the management and operations, that there is a culture of problem solving through dialogue and effective communication, and that there is effective supervision of the management and the operations. Another way to look at it from the board chair perspective is for the board and the chair to keep their nose in, but their fingers out. The chair works with other board members to keep its nose in the activities of the organization to make sure that the right things get done, but the board does not manage the organization. In other words, it keeps its fingers out. The key point is to recognize that the board and the management and operations have distinct responsibilities, but they are also viewed as complementary to each other, and they often overlap. It's the board chair's responsibility to lead the board, to engage the management and operations, and to ensure that the relationship is an exchange between equals. In other words, it's a balanced partnership. This brings us to the end of the first video in the two-part Role of the Board Chair video series. Thank you for watching. Our contact information and all the links in this slide are in the toolkit link that you can find in the description of the video on YouTube. If you are in Alberta and have a question, need further information, or would like to request our services, you can contact us by email or phone. Lastly, if you want to be notified of our future services and resources, you can add your email address to our subscription form and you'll receive updates as they become available. The link to the subscription form is in the description of the video as well. Thank you for your attention. Take care. And as always, remember that our communities have so much more because of everything you do. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.